Thank you for joining us for Calls with Paul.
Hey everybody, it's episode 2. It's our second week doing this. Are you a little less nervous this time?
I wasn't nervous last time.
Well, I was. I'm less nervous this time. So thanks for tuning in. One quick piece of announcement. We are going to move the date and the time. We've realized that we're entering the busy season, and asking Paul to sit here for 30 minutes on a Friday was causing a little bit of scheduling conflict. So we're going to move Calls with Paul to Wednesdays at noon Central Standard Time. So next week and from now on will be on Wednesdays. You can tune into us there. And
it's just a better day. It's not that I don't love you guys on Friday, because I do, but as we go through the week, just so you know, in real estate, we start out on Monday not as busy, and by Friday we're pretty crazy.
Yeah. So let me also ask, just to make sure, tech-wise, give us a thumbs up if you can hear okay, if sound's coming through, if the video quality is all right. Anybody?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you, JJ. We appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to dig in then. This week we're talking about first-time home buyers, right? So last week we spent a lot of time talking about sellers. You know, I read a stat about the National Association of Realtors actually said that Austin was the best market in the nation for millennials who are looking to purchase a home. Not that all first-time home buyers are going to be millennials. See, his phone's ringing because it's busy Friday. Not that all buyers are going to be millennials, but that's a large part of it. Can you tell us a little bit, Paul, about what are some of the challenges that a first-time home buyer is going to face?
So all first-time home buyers run into the problem, of course, of down payment, because they don't have any equity from a previous home to plop down, and maybe they're younger or whatever, but you really got to save for two things. Sometimes people get confused about this, but there's your down payment money, and then there's also closing costs, which is the cost of borrowing your money. That comes from the lender side. So saving all that up is really a challenge, and the new big challenge of all that for a lot of young folks are that they have a lot of debt from college and from higher education, which is great, but it doesn't help you save when you're paying all your student loans.
And Austin's rising home prices, I guess, don't help that either, because you're having to save more to get to that down payment.
That's right.
Well, let's talk about, all right, I'm ready to buy a house. Where do I start? Well, I'm ready to go get in the car and go look at some houses.
Let's do that, baby.
Where do we start?
Well, the first thing you really want to do is you want to get connected with a really good realtor. And I'd recommend that you either get a recommendation from me or somebody like me, and figure out who they work with. We use a guy named Max Lehman, and he does a nice job. So we send everybody over there to talk to Max and see what they're comfortable with.
What does that mean?
What they're comfortable with? Well, there's two sides of it. There's what you qualify for, and then there's, gosh, what am I comfortable spending? And at the end of the day, I don't really care what you qualify for. I care what you're comfortable with.
So the lender is actually going to help you figure out what kind of money you can spend to buy a home.
That's right. They're going to qualify you, and they're also going to run your credit to make sure that there isn't anything derogatory out there that might stop the whole process.
So before I go get in the car with you and start looking at $2 million listings, I need to make sure I can afford a $2 million listing?
You can go to any home you wish, because you're you, but I do recommend most folks, you really want to make sure that you can afford what you're looking at. I think it's kind of mean to show you a $2 million home when what you can afford is $1 million home, because it'll be really hard to pull the trigger on the lesser expensive one.
Well, if I meet with the lender, that's going to tell me what I can qualify to purchase based on my credit history and income and stuff like that. How do I know how much I have to save? Like if I'm really trying to, save up to buy that first house, what do I have to have?
Well, there's what you have to have and what you want to have. And those could be very different things. And people have a lot of different opinions on both sides of the ball. A lot of folks really want to have 20%, or I'm working with one group right now where they're going to put 40% down. But you can,
ouch.
Yeah, you can get away with as little as 5% if it's a primary purchase. It gets a little bit complicated, but the two questions that the path I would have people take is really, are you somebody who wants to put a lot of money down so that you can eventually pay that off? Or are you like me and you want to put as little money as you can down so you can use more of other people's money? And then after that, you really take a look at from the lender perspective what's required, and make a decision somewhere there in the middle.
Well, speaking of money,
yeah.
If I'm going to work with a realtor, do I have to pay you? How's that work?
Well, you don't, but most people do. But we
In
don't.
this situation, I'm the theoretical first-time home buyer.
I'm having a hard time separating.
I see that.
But yeah, I mean, we do cost money. We do this for a living, and I like to have my family fed.
We like it too.
So it does cost money, but on a very technical level, the money comes from the seller, from the proceeds at closing. There's a long-standing argument that I haven't heard in a long time, but I always keep it in my head, and that's that the buyer also pays commissions. It's just indirect. So when we're working with a buyer, we don't pretend that it's free, but it's not money that you have to write a check for.
So can I break this down and tell me if I'm wrong? We'll see what I've learned from riding around in the car with you for 15 years. So if I am buying a house, normally each agent is going, the seller's agent and the buyer's agent typically will earn what? 3% each?
3%.
So the buyer's agent would be paid 3%. And the seller's agent would be paid 3%.
That's right.
But generally speaking, in most deals, the seller is going to pay their agent that 3% commission, and they're going to pay the buyer's agent a 3% commission. Is that right?
That's right. Loosely, that's right.
Okay, so if I'm a first-time home buyer, I don't have to worry about, on top of having a down payment, having the commission having to pay you on top of that.
It's all built into the deal.
And Nicole is tuning in with us, so I'm going to check real quick to see what Nicole's question is. She's saying when they bought their first house, they were surprised with an appraisal that came in lower than their offer because it was a super hot market. And how do you advise on that? I'm going to ask that we hold off on that and talk about that when we get to the offer situation and we talk about values.
Absolutely.
But that's a great question.
That is a great question, Nicole, and we'll field that.
So you talk about agents and the cost of agents. Sometimes I'm driving by and I'll see a sign in the yard and it's got an agent's name on it. Would I be better off, Paul, if I just decided to work directly with that listing agent to buy the house, and then I don't have to pay you, or they don't have to pay you?
That's right. Maybe you save a little bit of money.
Yeah. How's that work?
Well, you can do that, and some people do. It's not recommended. I mean, so the listing agent has the seller's best interest at heart. Of course, I have your best interest at heart if you're working with me as a buyer. So we recommend going that route. But I think you probably ought to use a buyer's agent when you can, just so you can get all the wisdom and experience and knowledge.
Well, you have an advocate.
The forecasting and all the things that we do. But a lot of people do call the listing agent, and some people even call the listing agent while they're working with me, which is fine, just to pepper them with questions. But I don't recommend doing that. It's best to really keep
well, there's a reason you have 25 years of experience. I mean, you've got insight, you've seen the market, you can help people anticipate what kind of problems they're going to have in a home. What kind of in Central Austin, what kinds of issues are likely to come up, and you have a lot of established techniques for dealing with those. And depending on the side you're working on, trying to get your buyer the best deal or protect your seller from being nickeled and dimed in a negotiation. So I think it makes good sense.
Well, we fight for our clients.
Real estate's the biggest investment that a lot of people will ever own. And so the money matters, right? From the down payment to what am I paying my realtor. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other upfront costs that are involved with a real estate transaction that people should be ready for if they're buying a home?
Sure. So the upfront costs, once we get a deal, the two checks that we'll ask you to write are one for option money, which is generally about $300. And then the second check we'll ask you to write is a earnest money check, which is about 1% of the sales price.
What's the difference between those two?
The option money is you're buying an option just like you would with a stock or anything else to inspect the home and check it out and have the unrestricted right to terminate. So
this is I'm paying you some money because I would like to buy this house and I'm going to be doing some due diligence and stuff. Right. And what's the earnest money?
The earnest money is the seller's default remedy if the seller breaches the contract. So, which I can't think of a time that we've lost that, although I can think of a time when somebody forfeited that money. But you really have to be unscrupulous and not doing the right thing. The time we lost it, this was early days before the internet was really full functioning. We had a programmer guy who thought that he was employed when he wasn't. So he couldn't get qualified, and he figured it out like on the day of closing. Now this is like 20 years ago, so you can imagine it being the Wild West for programmers. But, and he said, that's fair. I probably shouldn't have my money back. But since then, everybody that is terminated has gotten their earnest money back.
Now, option money, I pay that and I don't get that back no matter what.
Right.
Okay.
You pay that for that time period to inspect the home.
Okay. Other fees, I interrupted you to talk about option and earnest money in more detail, but what are some of the other fees?
Well, sure. Those are the first couple of fees. And then you run into appraisal. Some lenders, not ours, but some lenders require that you pay for the appraisal up front. And then that's really it until you get to closing, and then it's closing costs.
You have inspection costs. You've got lender fees.
Yeah, I mean, so our inspector runs about $500 for the inspection, and if you have some other due diligence items that you want to do, like a structural engineer or an arborist or a pool inspection, as an example, all that stuff kind of adds up. So on some of our homes, it goes as high as $1,200 or so, and I've seen on the other homes, $400 or $500.
Okay. Well, how do we? Okay, I think I got it. I think I'm ready to go buy a house. How do we do it? How do we look for homes? Where do we start?
Well, buyers come to us in all formats of knowledge and knowing where they want to live and all that kind of stuff. So we take a look at where you at. And then we start trying to scope that down by looking at homes and eliminating, where we really believe in buyers when they get out there, not trying to select a home, but rather to delete it if it doesn't work for them, and moving on.
What about like figuring out your goals? I mean, like if I'm looking for a house for investment, that's going to be very different than if I'm looking at a house to buy or something else.
Absolutely. Sorry, I got distracted. We're trying to read.
We have a tech issue that says we have a low internet connection, so I just want to make sure everything's coming through okay. So yeah, give us a thumbs up if you can hear us and stuff. All right. So anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, if you're looking for an investment property, my guidance from the outset is of course different than it is if you're looking for your primary residence and you want to be in a very specific neighborhood. So usually we have a phone call that kicks the ball game off, where people call and we scope all that out and we figure it out and we kind of come up with a game plan, try to figure out who you are and how to help you the best we can.
Well, I mentioned in addition to the goals, you're going to have an idea of what you're looking for. Bedrooms, bathrooms, but also like lifestyle. What kind of architecture do I like? Do I want to be in the middle of the town? Do I want to have a short commute? Am I okay maybe having a lower price point but living further away from central Austin? Do I have a family? Do I need to be paying attention to schools? I guess that's all part of that conversation.
All that's really part of the conversation. It starts in case you want to be prepared with, what's your price range, where are you going to work, and what do you like to do? And with those three things, I can generally take a person and scope it down pretty good and go from there.
And we've got some other friends on the line. I just want to say hi to John and to Patrick. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us on your first-time homebuyer stuff. You sometimes talk about deal breakers as people begin their home search. Like, I think that's a fun way of looking at it. So it's not only what do I want in a home, but what are the deal breakers? Yeah,
that's a funny question because I had a lady, we were running around yesterday or the day before, I don't really remember, but she said, all I want is a hall closet, which for coats, a coat closet, that was it. All she wanted was a coat closet, which I'd never heard before. I thought that was great. I think she was teasing, but for most people, it's I have to have the master bedroom down, or I really have to have a pool, or I have to have. Oh gosh, I had one couple. They were so cool. They had two daughters, and they had to have the daughters had to have bedrooms that were symmetrical, or pretty much symmetrical.
Jealousy among the siblings.
Yeah. So they apparently with two girls, you really don't want to have any fights. So. Like it was real important to them to have that. And then there was another one where he was a professor at UT. He said, gosh, Paul, I just really want to hear the birds when I step outside. And I didn't realize how many places you can't hear the birds until we started working with them. Everybody has their thing. And of course, that's real important to keep in mind when you're running around.
Cool. Sarah, just on the tech side, Sarah's helping us behind the scenes, you guys. On Paul's Facebook Live, I think we're having some tech issues with our low connection. Okay. And John, thank you for the feedback. He's letting us know that it's a little bit choppy. But I think on the Homesville page, we should be good. So, all right, we've had this conversation.
That was Sarah's hand.
Do I just call you when I want to go see a home? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, you can do that, but what we prefer, because this is kind of a big thing for you to be buying a house, is to be more methodical about it. So depending on how big of an area we're hunting, we may look in one area and kind of clear that area or eliminate it for you if it's not an area that fits well, and we go on and on until we've really uncovered your needs and what works for you and what doesn't. And then we try to keep a real close eye on what's available and what's potential. And as those come up, if none of those work that's out there, as those come up, we go out and look at them pretty regularly.
And you have some really cool tech called collections that will help you communicate with people about their search and what's out there in a really beautiful sort of Pinterest way, I think.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like, so with Compass, we got this new technology called collections, and you can add listings to it. And of course, we can set up a search with that. It's just really fantastic. It's a wonderful way for us to communicate. And it's real pretty. It's a lot prettier than what the MLS does. No offense to you guys at the MLS station.
Cool. Well, I've heard about this website called Zillow. They have every single listing that's out there, right? I just need to go on Zillow and not look anywhere else and just send you the things I want to see.
Well, Zillow's addictive, and I love what they've done for our transparency, but they do have some data issues. There are listings out there that say that they're active, that aren't. There's listings that aren't on the market that are out there, and they have some general data issues. And the reason being is that they have so many inputs. They have MLS inputs. They have for sale by owners coming on. I do think Zillow's a wonderful place to hunt for sale by owners, and we try to keep an eye on them through there. But,
well, I think on Compass, we have actually a series of listings that are coming to the market and coming soon on the Compass website exclusively, like at least 7 days before they hit the market. And so it's a really great place. I would say Zillow's cool, but you're going to get the same information and probably a little bit more, with the exception of for sale by owners, on the Compass website. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. So, we have unique stuff in there, and I always look in there, of course, because I'm plugged into Compass, but I look in there for our buyers and often find, in fact, the guy we're working with next weekend, he has one in there that's coming soon, and we'll show it to him next weekend. So that's good. But on back to the MLS and Zillow, when we run equal searches, we find sometimes that there's more in the MLS than there is in Zillow.
Really?
And that's because there's some agents out there who are angry with Zillow. I'm not one of them, but that are angry with them and choose not to syndicate or send their listings over there.
And there's off-market and private listings and things like that.
So cool. It's really best to have a full-throated blitz on the market and see everything.
So I've lived in Austin since 1999, and you've been here a lot longer than that, working exclusively in Central Austin. I won't tell them your age.
You don't want to say how long that's been.
But our neighborhoods are different. Like, there are distinct personalities among neighborhoods and in different parts of Austin. It's just not Austin altogether. So tell us a little bit about how you would suggest a first-time homebuyer go about choosing the neighborhood that's right for them.
I think a lot of it's driven by price and location. So we start there, and then each neighborhood really does have a personality to it. So I recommend a few things. Like, if you start drilling in on a neighborhood, or a house, you might even door knock the neighborhood a little bit and get to know the neighbors, see if you can talk to people. I definitely suggest walking the street and just you get so much more when you get out of the car and you start walking around. We recommend going to the grocery store, because you really get to see your neighbors out in the wild, and certainly not dressed up, all that stuff. So those are just getting out there and kind of living it. Go to
check it out at daytime, nighttime.
Go to restaurants in the neighborhood, and depending on where you're at, you might want to drive by Friday at 10 o'clock. I've recommended that a few times, just depending on the neighborhood.
Okay, so we've gone house shopping, and I don't like anything that I'm seeing in my price range.
Oh.
Now what?
Well,
quit hitting the table.
Usually when people can you increase your price range?
No.
Okay, well, that's good news. That's the first time I've heard that.
That I can't increase my price range. Oh, for me.
For
But I'm
you,
your
yeah.
theoretical first-time home buyer.
Right. So you can either increase your price range, or we start taking people a little bit further out. The further out you go, the more home you can buy for the money, and that's, I think, generally true across the country.
Well, and I would just say also that having some realistic expectations about the market and what the market cycle's doing, and when inventory is going to tend to be low versus when inventory is going to tend to be high, it can be helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, time of year matters, and of course, your need to move in counts too, and all that stuff. It's a broad equation, and we figured out the best we can.
Well, now on the other hand, let's say I found a home I love. I'm super excited. Now what do we do?
Well,
how do I make it mine?
Well, we make an offer, and we get a little bit strategic about that based on how long it's been on the market and what it's asking for. And I like to say to folks, there's two things when you're looking at making an offer. There's what's it worth and what can we get it for. And those can be two separate things, which is important to keep in mind.
What's involved in making an offer?
Well, first you got to figure out what your terms are going to be and what you're going to offer. For example, if the house has been on the market for, I don't know, 3 hours,
we had one today go on the market this morning and got an offer 3 hours later.
Yeah. So if your home's been on the market 3 hours, I really recommend that you make a full price offer or consider going beyond.
So there's things like price. There's things like your option period, like how long you want to keep it tied up while you do your due diligence.
You want the details of the contract?
Well, just generally, like how making an offer and.
Yeah. So the big things I want folks to think about when you're making an offer is price and what you're going to put down, closing date, option period if you're going to have one. We've had a couple lately where it's been a competitive situation, and we just bypass the option period because we know the older homes and we know what's probably wrong with them for people, and a couple of people have opted to just bypass that to their advantage.
Well, I guess this becomes important if you have that experience of a bidding war.
Yeah.
A competitive multiple offer situation. So basically what that means is house goes on the market, multiple people put offers in on it, and we're all kind of competing with each other for this one home that I have fallen in love with.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do, Paul, to make sure that we win?
Well, we have two real levers. Sellers want two things. They want certainty of the deal going through, and then they also want the best price. So if we don't have price, we give more certainty of deal. And of course, every seller is different. I think most lean towards money, but if you have no additional money, doing as is, or doing no contingencies, or doing money that can't be refunded, if you have a contingency when you're walking in, those are all good levers to make sellers feel more certain that your deal is going to work out.
Okay. And you mentioned inspection cost earlier and this option period. What's an inspection and what's that look like? I like the word due diligence.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, an inspection, so you have all kinds of due diligence that we can do. And the first one is in almost every house. You call up an inspector, hopefully one of ours that we recommend, and you have them come out. They check everything from the slab to, they're not structural engineers, but they know about a little about a lot of things. They check the electric at the sockets, and they check the air conditioner and plugs and dishwasher. They crawl up in the attic. If it's a pier and beam home, they crawl underneath it, which you'll never do on your own.
And so then they give you a report about what they found. And no house is going to be perfect. Have you ever seen a completely squeaky clean inspection report?
There was one that was pretty close that Justin did, and if you're watching, Justin, you'll remember this. It was over off of airport. It was a condo, so it was newer, but it's very rare. Most of the time, what happens when people get their inspection reports, they go, "Ye gads, there's no way I could ever live there."
Has so many things wrong with it.
Mm-hmm. And then there's about a 4-hour delay, and people realize, gosh, there were people living here before me.
I know, they take pictures, like you get the inspection report and it's like every crack in the wall, like every little thing is called out, and you think, oh, how can anybody live in this home?
Yeah, it's really.
But that's really part of it, right? That's just part of you knowing what you're getting into. You might go, oh, wow, I didn't know that it was going to need a new roof. And then what happens?
Well, what we do internally, and I don't know what other agents do, but we go through the inspection report and we itemize things, and I seg them out with, like, here's what we really need to be focused on. That's a big problem. Here's some deferred maintenance items that you might think about, and I try to dollarize all of it, and from that, or we go get bids or whatever. But from all that, we find a way to make an amendment that we present to the seller side, and ask them to adjust the price or do whatever. They don't have to. They can say no, but they can't kick you out of the deal. So there's no reason to not ask for whatever you want.
So I can say, will you pay for the new roof, or give me money off for a new roof? And then the seller can say, I don't want to. And then I have to decide if I'm going to stay or go. If
you're going to move forward or not. Sometimes we make a counter to that, but yeah, I mean, that's the short of it.
Cool. Well, I want to get back to Nicole's question. Tell me about they're all different kinds of values. There's market value. There's assessed tax value. There's appraised value.
Right.
What do those mean as it relates to me buying a home?
So appraised value is really looking in the rearview mirror at what was going on back then. So when an appraiser goes out and looks at a property, they have guidelines that they have to follow that aren't always equal to what the market bears. They look in the rearview mirror. They look at homes that were similar, and of course, none of them are exactly the same. So when an appraiser does it, it's really his best guess based on the comps that are in the past. So from time to time, we do have homes like Nicole's that went through the process, and she, she paid less than what the appraiser felt like it was worth, which was a great thing. But knowing what's going on in the market, that's a different ballgame of being able to forecast both on the buy side and sell side of, like, where things are headed and trending. Sometimes you trend down, sometimes it's kind of flat, and sometimes it's up.
Well, when the market's super hot, I would imagine prices are going kink, 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 kink. And if an appraiser is looking backwards, there may not be data to justify that higher price. And that was what Nicole was saying, is that they had a house under contract, her first home, that they were paying more than the appraised value. The appraised value was down here. Now what?
Well, if you pay more, if you contracted for more than the appraised value, there's really three things or four that can really happen. One, the seller lowers the price, which is on the buy side. That's what we want to have happen. The other, and I've had this happen a couple of times, where the buyer makes up the whole difference, or it gets mediated there in the middle. And of course, the fourth choice is that the deal terminates, buyer gets earnest money back, and everybody goes on their way.
Because that appraised value has to do with getting your loan, right? And what the bank will lend you the money.
Right. And if you can't get the loan, the deal doesn't work, and so you exit the contract based on financing contingency.
And then there's tax assessed value. What's that?
Oh gosh, that's a real hot button for me. So
for everybody in Austin, I think.
Well, and really in the state of Texas, the way we do it, and the rest of the country, or most of the country, everybody, the taxing entity is allowed to know what you sold your home for.
There's transparency.
There's transparency, so it's fair. So here in Texas, it doesn't work that way. The state and the county doesn't have a right to know what you paid. Of course, I think there's somebody probably that has MLS access from there. But the taxing entity, the way they appraise homes, is what's called a shotgun appraisal. So they take a neighborhood and they say, hey, it's all worth this amount. And then they adjust based on, well, you're on a larger lot or whatever might be the case. So they're doing a whole lot of guessing, and they're shotgunning the area, because they don't go to each house and check it out and check out the fixtures.
And in Austin, we've had a situation where our tax assessed value has really lagged behind.
Yeah.
And they're shifting, where before they were really just sort of looking at the homes, and now they're focusing more on the value of property, because you can't contest that. Is that right?
That is right. So we're seeing values go up a lot because land values are increasing, and of course land is land, so that's hard to deal with. So yeah, it's getting.
So the appraised value is what the appraiser thinks your home is worth based on looking at past sales. The tax value is what the taxing entity thinks your property is worth. And then what's market value?
Market value is what it trades for, ultimately.
That's what I think it's worth, as a buyer or a seller, right?
Yeah, you're in charge of that.
Right. And so when I'm buying a home, it may not matter what the tax value is. It really matters what someone is willing to pay for that house as to what the market value is.
That's the real time. What's it worth?
Well, let's talk about the timing in today's Austin market. Is now a good time for someone to buy?
Absolutely. I think we're having, with rates going up, I think things are slowing. People are asking questions and having a little bit of doubt, and that's a great time for buyers to step out and be brave and do their thing. Of course, we're walking into the spring market, and we're starting to see some really good activity out here, but I think that's because rates have come down. We were close to 5%. Right now, we're at about 4.5%, and the spring market's coming in. So I think it'll be good stuff.
So there's a cycle. I've heard of things, buyers markets and sellers markets. Which one are we in now?
We're still in a seller's market, but it's not as, we had a seller's market that was this size, and now it's a seller's market that's more like that.
When you mentioned spring, it's about to become a stronger seller's market, isn't it?
I think so, if everything bears out the way it's supposed to.
So should I just wait?
You could, but then you might not find the home of your dreams.
Oh.
This is the time of year when most of the homes come out. So when we give guidance to sellers, this is when we ask them there's an 8% difference between what you can sell your home for in the fall and what you can in the spring.
So I should wait and buy in the fall. It'll be 8% cheaper.
No, you should find the right deal for yourself. And it's not necessarily cheaper. I'm not certain that 8% doesn't take into account the quality of the properties that come on the market. I think we have better stuff that comes on in the spring than the fall, but I don't know how to really.
So the trade-off is there might be fewer homes or homes that are not as nice on the market in the fall.
Right.
Okay.
Slimmer pickings.
Okay. Now, Austin, you read every time I turn around, there's a new headline that Austin's won some award. We've gotten some accolade for being the best at this or that, and that our economy is booming. Are we in a bubble?
No, I don't think we are. So. Just to make real estate real easy for everybody, what I tend to look at are jobs, and the more jobs that we have coming, the more demand we'll have, and that means that prices will continue to go up, provided, of course, we can afford them. But when you look at it, the jobs that are coming, especially from Apple and other companies that I can't think of, we have good jobs coming. And as long as that's happening, I'm not worried about a bubble. As long as we can afford the homes that are here, well, then we're all right.
Okay. Now, you've done a good job of kind of walking me, first-time home buyer, through the process of saving money and understanding what fees and things are going to be involved and how I go about picking my priorities and choosing a neighborhood and all that. What's the timeline look like? How long does it take for me to find the home I'm ready to buy?
So it's different for everybody. I had one guy years ago. He took 7 years. I thought we were just beer buddies. Scott, you're watching Scott. But most people, it doesn't take long to get educated to the market. We take people out and we show them 15 homes, and they kind of get it, what you can get for the money and all that stuff, that kind of equation. So depending on you and how fast you can get educated up, and then how long it takes for your home to come up. So if it's a home that shows up all the time, well, that's one thing. If you're looking for something very specific in particular in a small area, it can take longer.
If I want a home with a turret, that might be harder to find.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So especially if you have a budget.
Well, I guess it makes sense. It really does depend a little bit on the buyer. It depends a little bit on the inventory. I mean, if you're you've seen it all. I know from working with you that there are people that go out and buy homes in a month, and there are people that go out and look for years. And there's the one and dones. Yeah, you had a lot of those last year.
We had a slew of those. It was pretty cool.
Cool. Well, you guys, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them below. We always appreciate you tuning in to Calls with Paul. We will be moving to Wednesdays at 12 next week. Don't know what we're talking about yet, but we will be back in touch with you. And if you have ideas on topics, always let us know. And if you've got a first-time home buyer that you know that could benefit from this, please reach out, share the link to these. They stay on the Facebook page, and we can share those with everybody.
I'm trying to keep it symmetrical.
You're making me seasick.
You mentioned that before. And I want to be symmetrical.
All right. Well, and thank you for our friends that joined us, Edna and James Hayden and John Canning and all those guys. We always appreciate you coming on the show and tuning in. So we'll see you next week. You have anything to say?
No. Well, the one thing we did miss out on was contract to close. Generally, that's about 30 days. So you have the variables of like how long it takes you to figure it all out, and then it's about 30 days from contract to close. So that's all I just didn't want to leave anybody hanging that was wondering.
All right, number 2 done.
Yeah, babe.
All right, thanks you guys.
Cheers.